Welcome back to Ladies Who Create, a show where we'll be interviewing the incredibly inspiring women who are trailblazing the design and creative industries. I'm your co-host, Liz Meyer, a creative director and half of a Datalands duo.
And I'm your other co-host, Jess Rosenberg, and I'm a creative director currently working in the tech industry.
In this episode, we chat with Charlota Blunárová, a brand and digital designer and co-founder of We3.co, a distributed design collective that partners with IDEO Collab Ventures to invest creative capital into early-stage tech startups across AI, blockchain, and the new internet. Previously, Charlota was a design lead at IDEO, helping clients like Chanel, H&M, Ford, and Montclair design innovative products and services. All right, welcome Charlota to the Ladies Who Create podcast. We're so happy to have you here.
Hi, Jess. Hi, Liz. Thanks for having me. Really excited about this.
Well, we are excited as well, and we've just been so impressed by you and your career, and we'd love to hear just a little bit from you on what your career has looked like and kind of where it's brought you up until today.
Yeah, of course. One thing that I believe about design careers, and careers in general, really, is that it's no longer this sort of career ladder that you climb. It's more of the snakes and ladders game, if you know that from your childhood. It's like this big board game where, you can go up really quickly and then you have to change direction. Either you're forced or you decide to. And I think my career in design has been like that so far as well. I initially started as an industrial design student. So I was designing like complex machines. And after that, I fell in love in photography and I started doing wedding photography. So I've been to like 150 weddings. And after that, I was like, yeah, actually graphic design might be much more interesting for me. And so these like career pivots, I think they formed my thinking about what design is and could be. After my wedding photography deroad, I started working as a graphic designer at a design firm called IDEO. I started as an intern. In 4 years, I was promoted to a design lead. It was really amazing time there because I got to work on exciting clients, big innovation projects. And after that, I decided to take some time on sabbatical. And that led me to my current role, which is an independent brand and digital product designer, and also a co-founder of We3 Collective, which is a design collective of people who work with blockchain and crypto startups. And I'm also part of a venture capital firm, IDEO Collab Ventures, where I support founders with brand design expertise. So it's a really like a mix of different things in this like weird career patchwork at the moment.
Yeah, I love how your career has gone. You've done so many different things that have led you to where you are now. I think that's really admirable that you could jump around and still find yourself at IDEO. That's like an amazing dream job for so many people. That's so cool.
I just want to say that at IDEO, I started as an intern. And it was the first experience of, doing a little bit of like career prototyping in my life because I was finishing my master's degree in industrial design. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted, like, do I want to do industrial design? It felt really complex and hard for me. And I wasn't sure I'm actually well suited for that. So I thought, well, if I can prototype like how a vacuum cleaner looks like, what if I could prototype what my career could look like? Mm-hmm. And so I started like doing like applying to like hundreds of internship positions. And I had like 100 versions of my CV and portfolio because I was applying to graphic design jobs, to sort of like UX design jobs, to like packaging design jobs. And I was like, what if I took that path? Like, how could that sort of look like? And that was how I landed at IDEO. But before that, I've heard like many no's, and I've sent like a lot of emails and a lot of cover letters.
I love that idea of prototyping your own career. I'm sure a lot of folks who are looking for roles right now would find that interesting too. I'm curious, since you studied industrial design, when you interned at IDEO, obviously that wasn't in industrial design. What did that shift feel like for you?
It was really interesting to start at IDEO because when I was studying design, I was in a group of students and we were solely focused on industrial design. And at IDEO, what is really great is that you have multidisciplinary teams. So suddenly I was hanging out with people who were business designers, which I've never heard before, or researchers, or digital product designers. And just being on a project with like different people with different skill sets, I think that just like expanded my thinking about what design could look like and, you know, what are different shapes and forms it takes. So orienting in that was hard at first, just, you know, it being brought into like this very fast environment, on big, exciting projects that looked into like, you know, what is the future of X. But after a couple of months, I actually realized that's where I enjoy, like that's the sweet spot of where I can imagine myself thriving, because just having different perspectives in the room and not being sort of put into like one box of like, I'm a graphic designer and that's, you know, I'm just going to do graphic design like without any other context. That's something that I didn't want to do. So yeah, that was my path there.
That's interesting. I worked at IDEO for a couple months on contract, and I felt really similar. It was a team full of people that were so knowledgeable in so many different areas. And I did feel like the kid coming in as like, oh, I'm not just a graphic designer. Actually, I can learn to do this other thing. And people would basically take you under their wing and help you learn about all the work that they were doing. And it was just such a fascinating place. I find IDEO is like it is like an incubator in a way. And I think that you found yourself there as an intern and you could grow into who you are now. That was like probably the perfect spot to do that. That's kind of amazing that you found yourself there after iterating so many times on your CV and your cover letter and just like getting to that place. It's really cool.
I remember when I was offered a full-time role, and in the first meeting I had with my boss, he asked me, "What do you want to do after IDEO?" I was like, "What do you mean? I just started. Like, is this like some trick question?" And he was like, "No, I just want to understand like how you can best use your time here to learn what you want to learn. So, you know, in your next stage, you can use all those skills and mindsets. So think about what's good for the company, but think also what's good about yourself." And I was like, I was like mind blown. It's like, oh wow, this is great. Like, you know, we should acknowledge that people move through different career stages, and, you know, creating environment where they can learn.
Are there any other design methods you experimented with when exploring your careers?
So one other thing that I've done in my career is that when I decided to leave IDEO, I took a couple months of sabbatical. And it was kind of weird to leave and not sort of go into the next role. But, you know, it's something that I was like, okay, I'm just going to create this vacuum for experimenting. And I think that leads me back to thinking about the classic design process and how we use it to design products and services. When you start with some research, then you create some prototypes, you iterate on them, you validate some of your ideas, you see if that works. So during my sabbatical, I went on all social media and I was just like, hey, these are some topics I'm interested in. Anyone want to chat about these? Like, are you looking for co-founder or an employee or a freelancer? Just let's have a lot of coffee chats. And that was basically my like user research. I was learning about different roles there are in the design space, and also about myself. Like, what do I actually want to do? And then with freelancing, that was another experiment. I was like, what if I just put up on my portfolio website that I'm available to be hired as a freelancer, and then share it on the social media? And I was like, I have no idea like how to invoice people. I don't have any like business set up. But that's good because I don't have a customer yet. Like when I get a first client like that, I'll figure that out later. So yeah, I think like lots of these like ways how I try to describe what I do and put it out there in the world and then sort of see how it resonates with people help me sort of to get into a place where I'm more confident about the type of projects I want to work on. But also I have, some proofs of how, let me rephrase that. Yeah, I think a lot of these experiments just help me understand what type of work I want to do and also validate that there is a demand of the type of projects I want to work on.
So you user researched your
I love
career,
it.
basically. That's so cool.
But
it's never ending. Story,
No,
right?
It's true. It's never ending. I'm doing that all the time too. I just don't consciously think about it. So that's really interesting to hear.
It is really interesting. I could see a whole like course or playbook written about that for people. 'Cause I feel like you said, Liz, people do it unknowingly, and maybe even more so designers. And it's so interesting because I'm thinking about myself as you're talking about this right now, because I'm in a phase, I wouldn't call it I guess it's a sabbatical, but I'm very much in career exploration mode for myself right now. After having left just like 18 years of back-to-back full-time jobs and finally pausing. And I'm like, I'm exploring this podcast. I'm doing a bunch of little things that are interesting and experimenting, and it totally is like a design process. And I just love that way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I know that we're currently like hating on the double diamond, but I think it's kind of double diamond. It's like diverge to explore and then converge on sort of like what you see working, and it's it will go on forever, but yeah,
Definitely.
And it's good though. Yeah, it's good though because when you're giving yourself space to look at this as a design problem, like, okay, what does my career look like? What are the steps involved? I've always been under the impression that I'm supposed to climb a ladder, and having been like a director of brand, what's the next step in my I mean, I'm also a studio co-founder, so am I supposed to be the CEO of an agency? I don't want to do that. Like what?
yeah,
I think the hopping around and the chutes and ladders, kind of thought is probably much better suited for me, and I think for Jess too. Like I think there's a lot we can explore. There's so many divergent types of design right now that there's so many different venues towards getting creativity into your workflow and getting new positions in these emerging tech companies. And I don't know, it's just like I don't know, it feels pretty exciting right now. Like no one has to be the CEO. You can go back to being a brand designer. You can
totally
become a UX designer tomorrow. You can. It's just so different than it was like 5 years ago.
And I feel like I don't know, like I'm seeing this happen pretty clearly right now. It feels like such a sharp transition career-wise for so many different creatives and designers at this moment in time, especially as so many people, unfortunately, are experiencing layoffs, but are also starting out as freelancers, and they're taking these different approaches to thinking about their careers. So I wonder if like in 10, 20 years time, like will full-time jobs
be most of how designers and creatives, fill their resumes. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I definitely see a lot of trends, I definitely see a trend where people becoming more independent and decide to work on their own, just to have control over projects, the type of clients they get. And I totally understand that. It's that sort of freedom, and also understanding that you can actually shape how you work, which probably wasn't true for our parents in like more traditional work setup. But now we have design collectives, we have fractional roles. You can be independent designer. You can have some productized services that you sell, and you can create this. Sometimes they do call it, it's like this like patchwork career. It's like a mix of different ingredients, so you don't do just like one thing. And I think that's quite. It's also something for us. Perhaps our generation is the sort of first one that's the sort of like multi-hyphen generation, like we're like multiple things. And every time I'm trying to explain my parents or my friends what I do, it just becomes this like very long word no one understands. And
Yes.
so yeah, I think the work landscape is definitely changing, and my hope for designers, because we're in the creative industry, is that we can use that creativity that we have in our work to also think about how we do our work and being more active, proactive in a way how we shape it. So unfortunately now, with all the layoffs, like the job marketplace is not great, right? Let's acknowledge that. But I think perhaps that will spark, the new ways how designers think about how they work with companies.
Yeah, I agree. It actually, just thinking about like how you, I guess it leads me into a question. How did you find yourself in like Web3 and exploring that, that new emerging tech? I mean, that feels very similar to me, that it's just like a brand new world of design questions and people that are interested in commissioning design, and just like so many things happening in that area. How did you find yourself in there?
That was during my sabbatical, when I was just like, I'm gonna experiment with everything. Just throw it at me. I'll try it. I think it was a bull market, so everyone was about like crypto, NFTs. My husband was telling me about some tokens. I'm like, what is this? This sounds like
Same.
scam.
Same.
And that was, yeah. But I think, I saw NFTs. I was like, okay, there are some artists and creators here. There is some creator economy emerging. And then I realized I have to set up a wallet, and it's a painful user experience. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. And that got me into that space when I thought like, oh, it seems like everything that's here has been built by engineers, which, it's like there are some great ideas, but the user experience is terrible and no one knows how to not get scammed in this space. So I think we could do better. And at the same time, I realized a couple of my friends are also sort of exploring this field and doing some first product design projects or brand design projects. And this is how we started to work together. And what was quite unique about working with Web3 and blockchain startups at the time is because of the belief in decentralization and protocols that are owned by users. Some of these startups were like, hey, besides paying you cash, can we also give you some of our tokens? We're like, yeah, why not? We're going to take some tokens. It's a way to have a stake in this company or in this product. And we started doing that more and more, and we realized that's actually really great way to align incentives with founders, because as designers coming like very early into this project, we helped shape some of the user experiences, the brand strategies, brand identities, and really helped these projects to accelerate. And for that, we were getting some stake in the company in form of equity or tokens. So that is something that you know from, you can be an employee in a startup, you get some employee stock options as well. I think it's a great motivation. Doing that at scale as a freelancer, for example, is really hard because you need to get to a certain number of investments, because most of them, honestly, will just fail. So we thought, hey, it's like 15 of us. We work on different projects. What if we just take all those tokens and equity and we put it into one pool and we share it? So we can sort of increase the size of the basket and also the probability that perhaps one of these will be really successful. And then all of us will benefit from that. So this is how the sort of like operating model of We3 as a design collective came to be. And I think so far it worked really nicely because it introduced us also to a different way of thinking, coming into these projects, being hired as designers, but also realizing that, hey, I am really invested in making this company successful, which first of all forces you to really think about like, do I actually believe this product is cool and something I want to be associated with? Secondly, it's like, let's really think about where design can move the needle, because we don't have to do any busy work here. Like, we really want this team to succeed, not just sell more retainers or more projects. And then just this sort of like excitement of like, following founders' journeys and cheering them up from the sidelines. I really love that because, working with founders and early stage startups really is so joyful. It's hard, but it's joyful because they're really invested in their mission. They want to do things. It's like design doing, not design thinking. So yeah, sorry, that was a very long answer
No,
to question how
that
we
was great. Because I've personally, I feel like I have a story for everything that you are talking about, because I feel like you are living a life that it's a little parallel to how we've done stuff at my studio. We've worked with a bunch of crypto or Web3 companies, some DAOs, and some projects that the founders are so excited and they're so motivated to get things done. But it's very difficult to get them to understand the value of brand and the value of just design in general and investing in that, especially with like a dollar amount. So when equity is brought up, like we're totally in on crypto. Like we're excited about it. But a lot of those projects have failed, just not gonna lie. Like a lot of them have like basically up and disappeared. So we have a lot of these like beautiful projects that we've worked on, but then they've disintegrated into the ether, into the blockchain in a way. So they're not ever really dead, but they live on the blockchain forever. But I'm wondering how like the We3 Collective operates differently than like a freelancer, because I felt like it was hard to onboard people onto like selling design and make sure that they're really buying in properly. But I feel like you guys have it set up in a way that you can onboard people properly and put the processes in place. And yeah, like how do you get those founders to buy in fully? And the work that you're putting out is so amazing that it's almost shocking sometimes when I see the work. I'm like, wow, that was so good. How did they make that? How did they get that across the finish line? So yes, very long question, And I'm just really excitedly curious about how you do the whole process of like the development of the project. Yes.
Yeah, when we started, we really had to pitch ourselves, and that also came with us knocking on the door of some of the projects and saying like, "Hey, would you like some design? It might help you. We can give you some discount." Um, and I think what helped really is that the people, the other co-founders of We3 are very deeply curious in the technology. So they, besides being great designers, they also understand the technology. So when we start talking to founders, they actually saw like, oh, you get what we're building. You're not just going to paint it in nice colors. You get what, you get why we're doing that. You're not just trying to sell us some service that you offer. So that helped at the beginning. And then, the best referrals are, and the best projects are like when we are referred by other people. So founders refer We3 to other founders. And it's really like how we do most of the projects right now. It's like they come through referrals and we then decide to take them on. What is quite a new element in this sort of decision making compared to, being an agency owner or a freelancer is it's not only like the supply demand, right? I do design, you need design. Here's a price tag. We will shake hands. There's this sort of investment angle, and I think that was a mindset for as designers that we had to adopt and also still need to cultivate, because probably all of us as designers were overly optimistic because we can visualize what the future could look like. We look at an app that is bad and we say like, I can totally imagine this would be a great app. Let's just do all these steps to get there, and then definitely we will get to product market fit. Let's do it. Let's do it. But that's not the investor's mindset. It's like very skeptical, like very deep due diligence, really understanding what the team is building, what's the market for it, can it be successful? Because we are investing our time and our work. And it's easier to invest money, I would say, because like money, you can have a lot of money and you can just deploy it quite fast. With your own time and your own work, you cannot really scale that. Like I can only take on like few projects at a time. So that is something that has been and is continuously something that we're trying to figure out well at We3, is like understanding, if we're already lucky enough that we get to see interesting projects, like how do we decide where we focus?
It sounds like you almost have to take an investor's approach yourselves and, understanding the total addressable market and audience and competitors. Is that the case where, to be able to decide if you're going to invest your time, you're basically putting on an investor's hat and doing your due diligence?
Yeah, definitely. That's the case. And this is where we're very lucky to be working with other venture capital firms where we come in as a design partner. So for example, with IDEO Collab Ventures, who have been investing in Web3 and crypto for already like beyond 7 years, which doesn't sound like much, but in this space, it's a lot.
That's a long time.
They are investing in startups in sort of classical venture manner. And we are coming in as a design partner, investing creative capital. So it's just like financial capital plus creative capital together. And so they help us with their sort of deep due diligence and understanding, how to make best investment decisions. Mm-hmm. And then we're coming into the portfolio companies they invested in, and we help founders with our design expertise to accelerate them towards product market fit.
Yeah, that sounds like a great partnership to have established. Just the support.
Yeah, for sure. That must be so helpful in like deciding how to choose what to work on and not, especially if you're getting paid in investment or in equity.
We also get paid in cash, just,
Oh, okay.
to be clear, because we have to pay our bills.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's
So,
true.
of course.
I figured
So-
there was like some crazy liquidity pool, and you're just like, I don't know, wow, just pulling from it. But
It's a mix because we still, we
Okay.
have bills to pay. And yeah.
Do you find with the Web3 clients, I'm actually curious when you first started, because it was such a new space. And from a design aesthetic standpoint, how did you approach some of those early design opportunities with Web3 companies when it came to establishing, the visual identity or the brand in such a completely new landscape?
One thing that works differently in the Web3 space compared to traditional companies is that the approach to branding and brand identity is much less top-down. It's more like bottom-up, right? So I tend to think like when I work with more traditional clients, it's always this approach like, this is our brand, these are our guidelines, and then we're going to police everyone to use it correctly because that's how we keep our brand consistent. Whether in Web3, you're really tapping into communities and you want to build brand toolkits instead of brand guidelines. You just want to give the communities a toolkit to say, like, here are some brand symbols, some brand codes that you can play with. And you sort of have to let go of your expectations, which for a perfectionist designer is hard because people will do wild things with, what you thought like is a very clear way how to use a logo or illustration. But what really matters is that they are actually open to playing with these codes and, create memes, create fan art, spin it into different directions. So you really, one thing that I learned working in this space is that you have to keep the set of brand codes really limited because no one can sort of grasp like 20 different ways or 20 different symbols that are part of your brand. So it's either like logo, name, and color, and then perhaps some mascot, and that's like what you can use. And then creating toolkits for people to play with it. So a lot of the brand work I've done in this space is setting up Figma files that are sort of open source, and people can just come in and like use the assets. And then just like following on the internet, like what they do with it. Like one example is Lens Protocol, which is a decentralized social.
I love it.
And there's this like plant head character called Lenny. And, someone got it tattooed in a conference. I was like, oh, wow, that's the first time someone tattooed a logo that I designed. Someone like made, like a fan art illustrations, like 3D model of it. Someone did like a bedded necklace with it's kind of wild what people do with it. And that's what I love to see because, there's no one sort of sitting at the, saying like, oh, you cannot use it like this is the wrong shade of green.
Well, what matters most is that people are connecting with the brand, right? And it means something to them and they have an emotional connection to it. And it sounds like they do, with what you're describing. So at the end of the day, it's such a huge win.
Yeah, the community is so important in that area of the internet that people are getting tattoos of it. That's a winner. I love that Lens Protocol little guy. So cute. The first time I saw that, I was like, I want to be in this collective. I just want to make stuff like that. It's so fun. It's so cool.
Thank you.
So do you use any of the emerging like AI tools or anything like that in your direct to client work? Is that something that you guys have thought about or done?
I love it. I definitely would describe myself as a AI tourist. Like I go into every generative AI app and I just try it. Um, it's really exciting to me, but I understand that there are downsides of generative AI and creative work. But what it enables me as a designer at the moment is something I'm really stoked about, and that's being faster in concepting. So, instead of just like looking through a million images of like stock photos and finding the right one, I can just prompt it and sort of use it. And that doesn't mean that's the end of the design process. That means like then after that with a client, I can find a great photographer who will take this kind of photo, but with more specific art direction that are enabled through generative AI. So yeah, being faster in concepting, but also giving clients way to generate some of the brand assets themselves. I think that also helps, especially as I work with startups. They rarely have big budgets for beautiful illustrations or big photo shoots. They just need to be scrappy until they reach the product market fit, and they perhaps can like expand that and do things with more budget. And for that, generative AI is really, really cool because it doesn't limit us to only, what are the free icon sets or free illustration sets that, we can use in a design project.
I'm just going to where it leaves my brain because it's literally going to vanish, so it needs to be documented. But I wonder what the first style guide will be that has brand approved AI prompts in it.
It's probably right now. It's like probably in a Figma file right now.
It is. I hope, and I'm going to put it in ours, Liz, just in case. We've been using AI to explore some of our podcast branding, but
yeah, why not?
I could totally see that as like part of, brand guidelines in the future, like very specific mid-journey prompts or visual prompts or whatever tool you use that will produce on-brand imagery.
I think people forget that there's like that mood boarding part of every brand project, and not even every brand project, but every book project, everything that needs an illustrator, anything that needs any sort of photography. There's always a mood boarding section or phase of that project. And I cannot tell you how many times I have been told, oh, we had Dataland stuff on our mood board. That was so cool. And I'm like, did you hire us to do that? Did you pay us for that? So, and did you hire us for the actual project? No. So it's like, I feel like I would rather generate ideas in Midjourney than go scrape someone's Behance profile and pull their image and then say, hey, client, I want this in your project. It feels more like an actual art direction process than just stealing someone. I mean, everything is stolen on the internet at the moment, but like then just literally ripping it from someone's portfolio, that feels so bad. That's not.
Well, that's how lookalike work happens too, which we see so much in the industry as well.
Yeah,
bums me out.
Yeah, that was my rant about AI being good. The process for our little art direction brains. We need to see new stuff, or else it's gonna,
And also just to show it to clients, right? Like I can find an illustration, and then showing it to client and say like, imagine this style of illustration, but instead of squirrel, it's a car.
Yeah,
and they go blank. Like I have no idea what you mean.
About.
Yeah. It's like, why is there like a squirrel in my website mock-up when
you're like, no, don't look at the squirrel. Don't look at the squirrel. Just imagine your brand.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, we're gonna hire an illustrator who will do this at the car.
Yeah,
like, I don't get it.
application where like you present to a marketing director or founder and you're like, don't read the copy on the website. Just don't read it. And then they read it and they're like, why is the copy like this? And we're like, no, we told you not to read it. Or it's like you tell someone not to do something, the first thing they're going to do is do that thing. So AI is definitely a way to get past that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it opens up a market. Like if I can sell a client on a style of illustration because I've generated something it's not going to be good because AI isn't going to spit out something like visually perfect. But if I can, kind of get the idea in there, the squirrel style, but in the car, but like a messy car, well, then we can get the client on board a little bit quicker or at all, like they might have said, I don't know what you're talking about with this squirrel. This is weird. I'm not hiring an illustrator. This doesn't seem worth it. But if they see the car, they might be like, oh my gosh, you know what? You're a genius. Let's do it. Let's pull the trigger on this, $10,000 project, part of the project for the illustrator. Let's hire them. So, I mean, we've made a lot of progress with using stuff like that in my studio. So I like it.
I also, and this is where I'm not sure where the future is going, because to be honest, some of the generative AI tools might get so good that actually it will give you exactly what you want. But currently I really find it very painful to, get from the exploration stage where you're like, what if this would be the art direction, to a very specific like image that you have in mind, and then you just like try to prompt or edit to like a very specific detail. At that point, I'm usually like, it's much easier to art direct an illustrator or photographer. It's like it just saves so much time.
I was just gonna say I really like the stylistic reference prompt in Midjourney. I've been using that one a lot. Where you can upload an image of anything and it'll copy the style of that image, and then you can just regenerate from there. So that's
I don't think I have access to that. I think on the lower tiers.
You should.
On the basic tier. I just use it for like, I actually love the Midjourney feed, the feed of what people have already generated.
Yeah.
Looking through that feels like interesting. It's like a new Behance.
Yeah, for sure.
Or like a new Instagram. It's like all these ideas. Okay, so it's not like Instagram. It's more like a Behance or like a Pinterest or something. It's like, wow,
visual eye candy.
Yes, yeah. So it's not like there yet, but so that's our disclaimer. Disclaimer up that comes up on the video.
I'm curious.
We're not saying yes yet.
There's a lot of talk right now amongst designers in the creative community on, especially with AI and emerging AI tools, how folks can future-proof themselves and make sure that their skills are still relevant. I'm curious if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think with generative AI, the process of artworking just got shorter. But I think like what comes before and after now gets more space. So my hope is that we as designers can, move into that more strategic space when, we suddenly there's some time that opens up for us that we can dedicate to before we go prompting images. We actually start thinking about like what we're trying to say with these images, like what is this brand positioning that we want to achieve. And after that, we also have time to think about, is this the quality we wanted to achieve? Like, what is the overall design that we achieved with this? So that is my hope that, that it's not all doom. It's, there's a hope for us designers to be more strategic about our work. But another skill that I realized I need to develop further is just the language of art direction. So English is not my first language. And just sort of being in Midjourney and DALL-E and other tools, just sort of like realizing like what are all the artistic references that, perhaps once I heard in design school, but, what are the new ones? Like how do I describe what I want to achieve with visuals or video. Like I have to expand that vocabulary. So that's something that I'm trying to work on, just sort of realizing that could make me a better designer.
Interesting. That's really interesting to think about the language of prompting and art directing, really in general, but as it pertains to AI as well. And I think that feeds into storytelling abilities too. Like how can we as designers and creatives tell interesting stories about our work? That's one part of it. And the other part is how do we, prompt or art direct with a word so that we get the output that we're looking for.
Yeah. And then there's taste. Like that's a big topic because everyone's like, yeah, everyone can create images now, but do you have taste? And it's hard because sometimes I'm like, I'm a designer, but I'm not sure if I have taste. Like, what if I'm just influenced by all the algorithms on Pinterest and I just like what I there?
Well, we all are, I think.
I think everyone is. Like there are styles that come and go and we're like, oh, why did we wear this thing? Why did we like that picture? Oh gosh, what if I could go back and redo all of the projects in my design portfolio from school? I certainly would. I don't want to dedicate my time to ruining my previous life, but I just sometimes, yeah, taste is subjective, even to yourself.
Yeah.
Former you versus you now. It's just all. There are some like very questionable AI generated visuals on Twitter, Twitter
on
threads,
LinkedIn especially,
and LinkedIn. Very questionable taste on a lot of that, but I think that's where people shine when they do have taste. You can tell.
How do you find? I know we say it's subjective, and it is, but I think as like experienced designers and creatives, if folks call themselves that, what defines having good taste? It's such a philosophical question. There's no right answer. It's such a
No idea.
Philosophical question. But I'm curious how you might define it.
Yeah, great question. I think there are some universal principles of just like what makes a good visual, like what are the different principles of spacing, color theory, and so on. And then there's this sort of cultural understanding, like what are some emerging trends and what is sort of like falling out of the trend, and what are the different playgrounds you play with, like with branding, especially like what might be innovative in one industry, such as healthcare, might feel out of place in fashion just because they have different brand codes, different visual codes. So just having understanding, I would say like good taste is defined by understanding like what is relevant for the space for which you're creating visuals for. And then there's definitely like this bravery and edge to like show something unexpected. And that's where I personally sometimes browsing the internet, Arena, Pinterest, all those places, I'm sometimes like, ooh, I don't like this. But what I'm trying to like learn is to be like, wait, why don't I like this? Is this perhaps because I'm so used to things that I like that I don't even explore some of the possibilities of like what could be a different composition, layout, rhythm, colors, color combination. So I think like taste is not static, it's evolving. I don't think like one can be, oh, I achieved having a taste. I'm done. I'm set up for life, basically. So I think for us as creatives, it's just like constantly, seeking different sources of inspiration and then evaluating yourself. Like, is this something that I find interesting and why, or do I find it bad and why is that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the key to making innovative work also, is like leaning into the discomfort of, weird colors that you might not naturally want to put together, but for some reason something sticks out to you and you're like, I'm just gonna put that color together and push it off to the side of my artboard and check it out later, and then all of a sudden some things start falling into place. And I feel like that like exploratory process of just like finding out what you do or don't like and like letting yourself sit in that, I think that brings out some interesting and sometimes questionable design decisions. And that's okay.
Sometimes you might start off not liking something, but then over time you're like, oh wait, this is growing on me. And a good example of that for me is, you're gonna laugh at this, Tesla's Cybertruck.
Oh,
Yeah.
They've started appearing. So I'm in Texas, and Tesla has a big presence here, and so some of the employees working there started driving them around. So I've been seeing them on the road. My initial reaction when I saw that, I was like, this is the ugliest car I've ever seen. How are they actually making this? Like, what is this monstrosity? But then over time, I've been thinking about why I'm so like have such a visceral like negative reaction to it. And it's because nothing like it exists. And it's so different. And we're so used to cars, I think, looking a certain way. And they've kind of gradually evolved design-wise over time. But when something so insanely new is introduced into the market, there's this shock value that comes with it. So I think that's what I was reacting to. Because now I'm like, oh, look at the sharp edges. It's actually really cool looking. And the way the lights, like, the tail lights come on at night is very streamlined and modern. And so, not that I love it yet, but I can definitely appreciate it more for the risk taking that it's doing and for the newness of it.
See, we put like when it first debuted, like the photo or like the rendering of it. Gavin's my husband, also my partner in my studio. Just as a brief aside, we put it like whatever $100 deposit down because we were both like, that is so ugly. We must have it. We must have this disgusting car. And I have grown to dislike it because of the hype and because so many people piled onto it that I had to be like, too many people like it now. I can't like it anymore.
It's an enigma for sure.
That's my own problem. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the, I will give Elon credit for creating cultural enigmas.
Yeah. That is true. He has. Yeah. Like, I think sometimes also getting back to Web3 a little bit, I think that a lot of Web3 companies lean into that discomfort kind of visual style and doing something a little different just for the sake of being different. How do you deal with that type of client like that? It's just like, we want to be so different from the other people. We don't care what it looks like. Just do it. Do you ever have clients like that?
I would actually wish I would have more clients like that.
Oh,
like, who are like, let's just be weird. One thing that's hard about Web3 and branding in Web3 is like, it's so intangible because it's like open internet, blockchains. Like, what do you visualize? That's why everyone is using gradients. It's like, some sort of cool technology. How do we, like, it doesn't have shape. You cannot photograph it. You cannot, it's not a car. It's not a healthcare product. It's not a cosmetics. So that's how we ended up with so many gradients, really, in our design, I think. But when I have clients who are like, yeah, let's just go into weird direction, I think you still want to keep something that feels like mixing weird and unexpected with expected, right? Because you don't want to be like totally unexpected. You want to have some elements that people can recognize to see like, oh, I see. This is not just badly designed website with weird spacing and layout that I cannot read. is actually some sort of layout. There's some sort of grid on the background that it's just a little bit perhaps more open. So you always want to use at least something that feels familiar. One example of that is like sometimes founders, that happens quite often. They would send the linear website, the dark purple gradient, and like, oh, we love this. It's like very innovative. And, I don't blame them because it's, they are not designers. They don't go around looking at websites like weird people. That's only as designers we go look at other people's websites and just like get inspired. So they don't know, like, yeah, this is kind of overused style and doesn't really, that won't really make you recognizable. And if you're not the first one who did that as linear, who did that really, really well, then you're just going to be sort of following up with something that has been done and has like provides no differentiation for your brand, and no one's going to remember that. So that's I think what is our role as designers to, be the sounding board and say like, yes, I understand why you like it, but let me show you a timeline of, where this trend fits and, what are other companies that might be doing the same. And sometimes that is not a problem. That's something, for example, with logo design. Sometimes people get offended when a logo is like even like only 10% similar to some other logo. But it's like, yeah, this is a logo for a tech product, and this is a logo for a Japanese bakery. It's not a big deal that they are a little bit similar, because like there won't be situation when there's going to be a customer who's like, oh, wait, I wanted to buy this SaaS subscription software, and accidentally I bought a croissant in Japan because they had similar logo. It's like, it's not a big deal.
Like a box croissant.
Yeah.
It's also interesting too, like for the linear example that's come up so many times for me too, over the past couple of years. Really trying to dig into the why they're resonating with it. Is it the color? Is it the level of detail and precision that they're seeing? Or is it literally exactly what they're seeing on the linear website? So trying to kind of peel back the layers of understanding to grasp what they're reacting to, I find is always really interesting.
Or, people sometimes, and I say this with a loving heart. Sometimes founders, they're like, we want to be like Nike.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you have budget like Nike to build a brand like Nike? Well, when you get there, I seriously hope that you can be like Nike, but let's focus on where we are now.
Well, it's they want to be like Nike because they want the brand awareness and the brand love and all of the success that comes with Nike. But in reality, it takes a lot of risk taking and experimentation to get to that place, which I find a lot of the times companies are averse to, especially in this type of market. So like they want all of what Nike has achieved, but they might not be ready to take the steps to get there. It's scary, and it's a lot of, innovation and experimentation is scary.
Yeah, exactly as you say. It's experimentation, it's time, it's budget.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the swoosh logo is great and elegant, but it's that logo plus like $100 million and time that sort of gets you in a direction.
Yeah, money, time, consistency, commitment.
Yeah, that was like a story from my school. Apparently the school, I believe it was a student that was going to my art school back in the 80s. She designed the logo. Maybe it was Oregon State University. I don't know. It was just very important to Portland, Oregon, where I went to school. But the idea was that she got paid like $30. She was a student and she made the swoosh. But what does that mean? What does the swoosh mean within the context of the entire company and all the years that they've put into marketing and trying new things? There's just so much more to it than a logo, and so much more to it than just like the initial brand guidelines. There's like the extension of it. Like there's a whole life that the brand takes on.
Charlotta, it was so wonderful having you with us today. Learned so much, and I'm so inspired by your journey and the approach that you've taken in exploring your career. It's really inspiring. So thank you so much for spending time with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and asking great questions. This is really nice, fun interview. So yeah, thank you.